Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. Today we're taking a look at the final prices from the last Rock Island auction, and we'll start with the weird and very large McCarty turret revolver. This thing went for way more than it was estimated for. I think the estimate was like 9 to 13 or something, which is really quite high to begin with, and the fact that it brought almost 22,000 is a little surprising to me, but it certainly is a one-of-a-kind thing. So to me, honestly, something like the Schulhof really is more interesting in that it has a bit more history to it. It was part of a developmental process. And so to me, this price is actually a little bit surprisingly low, maybe, although this is not out of the realm for this sort of thing. Changing gears a bit, the air rifles, to be honest, I don't really often follow the values of air rifles like this, so I don't really have a good context for where exactly this price comes in. It certainly is an interesting gun, and I suspect that someone's pretty happy with having gotten that. Now, the Remingtons, this is not a surprise. The first pattern is substantially more scarce than the second, and so brought more. I think we're going to see a whole series of rifles here that are kind of in this sort of low four-digit price range, which is what you kind of expect to see for a lot of Civil War carbines. These are the sorts of things, they occasionally sell for less, but that's usually when they're being sold by people who don't really know what they are, and sold to people who do know exactly what they are. When things like this go up for auction, they tend to be viewed by an audience that knows exactly what they are and they know what they're looking for, and you don't generally hide something interesting in an auction and have it end up going for a lot less than it's worth. So it was a little surprising to me that the conversion here went for less than the original Navy carbine, but that's how it goes sometimes. Let's see, we have another one, the Gibbs carbine, another one. You see $4,000 here, or $5,000 here, $4,000 for the last, about $3,000 for the Jenks, $3,500 and $2,000 for the Remingtons. This is pretty typical for carbines dating back to the Civil War. None of these are super common, and especially finding them in reasonably good condition. We're going to take a jump here. Semi-automatic prototype military rifles tend to bring substantial money. This went for a little less than I would have anticipated, but then again, the SIG rifles here, while very interesting, don't have a lot of specific military background. Unlike AR-10s. This is right about what I was expecting to see on the Semiauto, the original Portuguese AR-10. Maybe a little bit high, given that this one doesn't have the original furniture on it, but it did have a pretty nice bore, and that's not easy to find. So someone who wants an original AR-10 is going to have to pay a substantial amount of money because there just weren't that many of them. They didn't generally get converted to semi-auto. Well, they weren't made in semi-auto, and your alternative are guns like the Armalite here, which don't quite fit the part. They don't quite look right. So that's why you see this one going for substantially less. The Danish M1 Garand, this is mechanically identical to an American Garand, but manufactured in Italy and has a nice, neat Danish set of markings there, as you can see. Yeah, a little more expensive than you're going to pay, well, double the price you're going to pay for a standard M1, but for a gun that's a lot less common, that kind of makes sense. Now, on this guy, I think the reason that this brought as much as it did, compared to the glut of kind of standard HK clones on the market, is because while this thing has weird thumbhole fake wood furniture, it is a true made-in-Germany HK G3 rifle, and that counts for a lot. In fact, you can see the same thing going on here. For an original, closest you can get to a real Belgian military FAL with a G-Series gun, someone's paying substantial money, 17 grand for that. We'll see the same thing with some of the original early Santa Fe G3 imports. Same deal there. They bring even more than that FAL. This guy is really changing gears quite a bit. I thought this was an interesting one to look at because you don't see these very often, and it brought a commensurate amount of money. Not particularly surprised here. This is something that's going to appeal to someone who collects specifically Swiss. They've got all the standard rifles. Now they're looking for some of the additional scarce ones. The short-barreled Kimball failed to sell. That typically means that there was a reserve price on it. that wasn't met. People have often asked me, I wasn't paying attention, or I wasn't watching this auction as it happened, so I don't know what the bidding actually got to on that, but the long barrel did sell for $2,000. Substantially less than an OSS artifact is always going to be pretty cool. This is just a really good example of how something that was made rather crudely and cost very little in original materials, because of its historical relevance, can be worth a ton of money today. $15,000 for what is essentially a crude dart gun. The knee mortar here, this is the early pattern of knee mortar, which is rather harder to find than the late one, and it is a live registered destructive device. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that it brought less than $5,000. The reason is these things just don't bring a lot, because it's rather difficult to be able to actually fire them. So the same amount for the Semiauto 1919 really does surprise me. This is substantially more than I typically see these things sell for. In my experience, you can find a Semiauto 1919 for like half of this. So having the tripod helps, but I wonder if there was something that I missed there, or if there were just a couple of people who decided they didn't want to spend time looking and just wanted to buy that one. The Hall clock gun, it's pretty cool. I don't know that I would have paid $3,500 for it, but that's what's nice about an auction, is the people who are the ones who really want something are the people who end up with it. So it's definitely a very cool curio, and more intact than most of those things are. Prototypes, of course, always bring quite a lot. This Colt 1971, $12,500, mostly unmarked. Definitely an early, not a production gun at all. So we're going to see a lot of money for that. We're going to see a lot of money for the Colt Model M that's coming out next year as well. See even more, just under $14,000 for this guy. These are the sorts of things that if you have a collection and you get all of the common ones and then you get all of the uncommon ones, if you want to keep collecting, you're forced to start looking for things like prototypes. And at that point, the money really goes up, because you have a lot of people chasing a very small number of guns. Lastly, we have the Korth PRS. This is actually a bit like $750 more than retail price for these. However, this one you get to buy and then have shipped to your FFL, and it becomes immediately yours, where buying one of these from the factory is generally going to be a custom ordered thing, and you're going to have to wait many months for it. So that's why you see a price there that's higher than retail. Someone's paying a premium to be able to just have the gun right now. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit of a roundup there, or follow up on the auction, and stay tuned. We'll have some more really cool stuff starting tomorrow.